I can't do what the guys in the ring do. I knew that right away. But I could talk. No problem with the confidence of getting up there and speaking. It's no problem at all. And it was like going from 7th grade to graduating high school in 10 minutes. And then if I wore a black jacket, I'd wear a red scarf. So the scarf was kind of my, my trademark. I managed like a wrestler and I wrestled like a manager. I said, I want us to get work outside of here. And what's the best way to do that? I said, putting a tag team together. Just 2 guys you throw together, 2 guys that can work together. And it was just comfortable. It worked out well. I wish I could have experienced a little bit more, to get that type of heat. You never walk away totally. It's a part of you. It's in you. You got to be around it. I got to be around it somehow. So you walk a real fine line as a manager. I learned that very early on. You got to eat crap for a while until you start, making your way. Steele hits Valiant. Valiant rolls to me and, you fight him. Throws me in the ring, and I don't know what to do.
Call it how I see it, straight talk, no disguise. So the slang dripping, got the truth in my eyes. Might like gavel, every word, lay it down. Coach C in the booth, turn the game all around. Yeah, it's Coach C, he the best for business. It's Coach C, he the best for business. I'm sharp as attack when I call the play-by-play. Every dog got his day, and I make the crowd stay. It's every week we go live on a Wednesday. Dressing so sharp, that's the reason why your friends stay. The youngest in the game to do it, best for business. Coach C is the truth and everybody gonna witness. Love entertainment, you swear it's your destiny. Link with Coach C, we can talk about your legacy. It's Coach C, he the best for business. It's Coach C, he the best for business.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Another episode of Best for Business. I'm so pumped for this one. The Shark Thing, John Shane. Thank you for joining me for this one.
Oh, my pleasure, Chris, man. How's things going?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to learn a lot about your story in pro wrestling. So thank you once again for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
So I'm excited to get to do this. So originally, what was the thing about wrestling that even interested you at first when it came to it?
Me, as a kid, pretty much.
Yeah. What was the thing? Obviously, you did a lot in pro wrestling, but what was the thing that even interested you or piqued your interest at first?
Well, I always enjoyed sports, and I always was a performer. I did a lot of acting as a kid and everything, and that's the one thing that could put them both together. I mean, that was the one thing. I played baseball in high school. I didn't wrestle, but I got into wrestling probably about age like 11 or 12, and then started going to the matches with my friend and everything, and got into it from them. I was always a fan.
Wow. How about acting? Like, what did you do with acting?
No, not too much. I mean, I did some extra work later on, and high school stuff and stuff like that. I took a few courses in college, but just to keep my hand at it. Nothing really crazy. Sorry,
Wow.
my cat walk in every once in a while.
Yeah, no worries. When we talk about stories in pro wrestling, yours is very unique. So let me get this straight. You were in college with Mick Foley, correct?
Well, actually, that's how I kind of got the idea to get into the business. I transferred up to Cortland in the fall of '84, and then again back on the acting. I got in. I was majoring in phys ed, and I minored in radio, television production. And when you minor in that stuff, you kind of get involved with the television and the radio station. So I went up to the radio station and I tried out to get an air shift. And as fate would have it, I got Saturday nights from 11 to 3. And I went up to do my first shift, and the guy doing 7 to 11 was a guy by the name of Mick Foley. So Mick helped me out there, and we used to, when you start at a college radio station, you get there really early. I was pulling my albums, and we got talking, and we just found out that we both had an interest in wrestling. And the funny thing is back then, you're talking '84, before WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. If you met anybody else that was into wrestling, you would, it's like a kindred soul, because it was kind of still a little bit underground by then. So Mick and I would talk about the matches we won, what we liked, who we didn't like, and everything. And mostly we were pretty much WWF fans, but I was also a big Georgia fan from the TBS stuff. We got talking to stuff. So Mick, so after that spring of '85, I went back to the station in the fall of '85, and Mick didn't get a shift, and I was wondering what happened to him, and I had no idea. I saw him in classes, but he wouldn't tell me much. But that's when he was training with the guy worked with Bruno. I don't know, the guy in he used to go to Pittsburgh to train. Mm-hmm. So he would go there. And I never knew about it. And it wasn't until I came back after I graduated and I was up at the radio station hanging out. He came up to say hello, and he told me about it. So I didn't even know how to get into it back then, because you got to understand there were really no wrestling schools. There were very few. So it was hard to get involved back then. But then Mick was going. And then when it was my time, I asked him for some ideas. And when it was my time to send a tape in, he helped me out as long as did Ricky Steamboat.
Wow. So I gotta ask you, what was like your radio station, like certain kind of music or like what did you do for your radio station?
WSUC, progressive rock of the 80s.
Okay.
That's what it was. I mean, I stuck to my Allman Brothers and my Southern rock and everything like that. And that's pretty much what I did. But yeah, it would play all kinds. I mean, you had to play some of the stuff they wanted you to play, but then you got your own in there. It was okay. We had a lot of fun with it. It got a nice radius, not just in the college, but just the whole surrounding area. So you got fans and stuff. Because I did it. The last show I did was a happy hour show between 3 and 5. I had a lot of laughs with that. But it was just something to do when you're up at college. It was all right.
And talking about especially wrestling and radio and everything, one thing that stands out about you, obviously being a manager and everything you've done, is the confidence. So was it easy to build? I know you said you did acting and everything, but was confidence and talking on the mics easy for you?
Oh yeah, always, always. I mean, I could. I mean, if you gave me right now, give me a commercial to read, I could read it perfectly for the first time. It's something. It's just a skill I have.
Yeah.
So it's just. I mean, I can't do what the guys in the ring do. I knew that right away. But I could talk, and I could talk up a. I could do it. You give me something to talk about, I'll talk about it. Whatever it is.
Wow.
But yeah, no problem with the confidence of getting up there and speaking. It's no problem at all. It was always something that came easy to me.
So when you first get involved, is this post-college?
Yeah, the first thing I ever did, I mean, as far as wrestling was concerned, was post-college. Because what happened is right when I got out of college, I had a girlfriend and I got engaged. And again, if you want to get into wrestling, it's really hard to have a family when you're just starting out because the pays are low and you really have to convince people on why you want to do this crazy thing, because a lot of people don't get it. And again, I think Jeff Jarrett told me a long time ago, if I have to tell you about it, forget it. But if I don't have to tell you about it, something like that. You know what I mean? So when you're in it, you know about it. So like I said, the first thing ever, I went to a John Arezzi convention. It was either 91 or 92. I'm not too sure. I think it was 91. And Larry Sharp had a school and he had a ring set up. So there were kids that were paying $20 to wrestle each other and have a match. And Larry would have it taped. And then you'd have a little tape of yourself wrestling in front of a crowd, even though the crowd was going to vendors and everything like that. So you were in front of people.
Yeah.
So Larry would tape it, and Larry made money that day. He had a lot of people going up there and everything. And I decided that I wanted to do a promo. And I just wanted to get up in front of the people with a microphone and have some fun. And Larry said, okay, we can do that. But I'll get some wrestlers. So he had some students. I had this guy, the Bear, who I just met 2 seconds before I went out there. And then Brian Last, who I guess was doing the recording, calls out to Cornette, and who was doing vending like a few feet away, said, hey, why don't you do a promo with this guy? And now I'm freaking out because I just thought I was going to be by myself. Now you got one of the best in the business coming up there. So we went at it for about, like 10, a couple of minutes, right? And I felt kind of held my own. I mean, the things on YouTube, I mean, for first time doing something, I think I did all right. And Cornette ripped into me. We had a lot of fun with it. So the interview ends and I get out of the ring and I went to they had an autograph room where all the pros were. I mean, I think Flair was there, Kerry Von Erich, there's a ton of like wrestlers because Arezzi really went all out on these conventions. And I saw Cornette and I went up to him and I shook his hand. I thanked him and everything. And he asked me what I was doing in the business. And I said, this is my first time doing anything. And the look of shock on his face made me think, all right, I think I got something here. So around that same time, I met Sonny Beach, who's an independent Northeast wrestler, and he was starting to train in Brooklyn. So I did a little training with him that led to my first match in '93 in Massapequa. I was supposed to manage a guy by the name of L.A. Gore against Coco Samoa, who was a Samoan wrestler, and ended up being another wrestler came in because L.A. Gore couldn't make it, but that was my first time doing it. So it was a fed called Coast to Coast. And it lasted for a little while, but then they ran out of money. And then Sonny was not going to be doing much anymore. And the Power twins, who were my mate Dave and Larry Power, Dave Power, gave me the Sure Thing name. Because when I did the thing with Cornette, I was known as Sweet Papa John, which
I gotta ask, like, I'm gonna put the visual up there. Like, what was the promo you did with Cornette for? Like, just calling out like anyone, or how did the promo go? Like the dynamic?
Well, the promo was I was just I said I was going to be the big manager of the '90s. I was going to leave him in the dust. I just went out and started ripping him, and he made fun of my clothes. He made fun. It was perfect. We just went back and forth. It was just to try to get myself somewhat over, and I didn't expect him to be there, and I had to kind of do it pretty much off the hip, but it was fine, and he was great. He'll cut a promo on his deathbed. He's that damn good. I mean,
Yeah.
And I was very gracious. He could have really just not wanted to do it, whatever, and. He was cool about it. And I haven't really seen him since. I haven't talked to him since that time. I don't even know if he knows about it, to tell you the truth. I have no idea.
Wow. Now, you said a few things I want to ask you. The first thing, is there like a lesson that stands out learning from the Power Twins?
Oh yeah. That the lesson I learned was that if you want to be anything in this business, especially a manager too, you have to take the bumps. You have to be able to get in that ring, because you're not going to get the respect from the wrestlers if you're not willing to put your body on the line to some extent. Now, I'm not a wrestler. I blow up 5 seconds. You have to be able to take the bumps. You got to be at least to be able to take a back fall and a front fall and be able to be thrown in the ropes. You got to be able to at least do that and be able to be hit off the apron. That's the minimum. And if you don't want to get touched, these guys aren't going to want to work with you, because you have to make the match work. Okay. So the Power Twins are like, you got to get in there. So they beat the hell out of me in the summer of '95. And that was like my first taste of it. But what I learned most from them is that you got to get in and you got to work with these guys. So after they basically went to Vegas and it kind of ended, what was happening with me there. And that's when I fell into the Doghouse, but that was much later on. I started doing indie shows, but the Doghouse, same thing. Doghouse was a very, if you were tough, if you tried to say you were phony tough, they got it out of you pretty quick, because you had guys like Homicide, Low Life Louie, guys like that. They didn't take no shit from you. If you went out, there was a few guys that went out there, tried to show themselves, and you didn't see them again.
Wow.
You had to have respect for the guys. Let me tell you, do you want to talk Doghouse, or will you talk about
Absolutely. I got some questions, but please talk Doghouse.
All right. The Doghouse. All right, let's.
That's where like Monster Mac 2 and Low Key, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get into all that. You're gonna have to do some editing of what we just
No
to
worries.
get rid of this. But Bobby Lombardi, rest in peace, started the Doghouse. Well, they actually started the Long Island Wrestling Federation, and I want to say 97, 98. And basically what he did is he had shows on Long Island, and we had a lot of Johnny Rogers guys like Kid USA and a Spanish Angel and guys like that. And what happened is his booker got changed, and he moved into what he thought was, he wanted to have one last big show, and he was going to open his wrestling school. I believe it was 1987. They had the JYD Memorial. Bobby Lombardi went all out. He got guys Bundy, Tito Santana, Demolition, a lot of guys, a lot of local guys that he got. I think DiBiase was on that show. There's so many people on that show. And that was his last final show before he opened the Doghouse. And for me, he called me up, and I'd worked with him at the LIWF with Kid USA and Rocky Shore and some other guys I was working with. And he calls me up and says, "Hey, I'm having this big show, and I want you to be on it. I want you to manage." I go, "Well, who am I managing?" He goes, "I want you to manage Johnny Valiant against Georgie Animal Steele." Now, to me, these were two guys I grew up watching, and I always admired George Steele. He was just such a character and I was looking forward to this. And again, I'd been only in the business a short time, so it was probably the first big match that I ever did. So we went down. It was at the Elks Lodge in Queens in front of like 900, 1,000 people, and they had a student show in the beginning of the first Doghouse students, and then they had the main show, and I was on the main show. And actually, Monster Mac got his crack on the student show. I think Low Key was on the student show, so there was a lot of guys just starting out back then. So I go there, and I'm all psyched to be managing Johnny Valiant, and I introduce myself, and he goes, "Hey, how you doing?" Right? And I said, "All right." And then George Steele comes in. I go, "Mr. Steele, my name's John Shea. I'll be managing against you. Is there anything you want to go over? Any stuff you want to go over?" He goes, "What stuff?" I said, "What do you want to do in the ring?" Don't worry about it. I said, "All right." And I got a feeling that he wasn't treating me very well, but okay. I've dealt with surly people before. So now the matches are going on, and I'm kind of peeking out, watching my friends wrestle and whatever. And so I get together, and they say, "Okay, here's the finish. I'll call you up. You grab Mr. Steele. I'll have the ropes, Mr. Steele. I'll hit you, and then we'll go." But what else are we going to do? "Don't worry about it." I'm like, "Oh, man." I'm like, okay, because I'm used to calling everything in the back,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So now So I'm getting ready. We're about a match or two away, and I get behind them. They don't see me. And George turns to Johnny and he goes, listen, just throw the kid to me. Say, you're the manager, you fight him. So now, again, like I said, I've taken bumps. I kind of know what I'm doing, but I'm a little scared. I don't know what they're going to do to me. So, but what am I going to do? I can either leave or say, hey, guys, or, I'm supposed to be trained. I got to go along with the program.
Mm-hmm.
So we get out there and they're not doing nothing. They're just working the crowd. They are not even touching each other.
Easy night for them. Oh, yeah.
Oh, they finally lock up. Steele hits Valiant. Valiant rolls to me and you fight him. Throws me in the ring, and I don't know what to do. So I run around a circle and I run out. So I said, I'm not going to fight him. So they get back in together. They lock up, and I guess George says, give him to me again. So he hits him again, same thing. And I try to run out again. This time Steele catches me. He throws me into the apron. I take an apron bump. I fall back. He grabs me by the heel, and he walks me towards the table where Ox Baker, another great old classic who I love working with, is at the table. And he says to me, table. I'm like, okay. So he walks over. I slams me into the table. I fall back, takes my head, slams it again. I'm right in front of Ox Baker, right? So I'm laying there. So kids start coming over and they're like, and Ox is yelling, get these kids, security, screaming, right? Now I'm just laying. I go, no, I'm going to sell for a couple of minutes. Let them do some work for a change. They're still like doing hardly anything. I finally stagger up. I stagger around like I'm selling. Valiant doesn't even know my name. He goes, manager, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm okay. He goes, where are we? Now, I knew we were in Queens, but I went for the ha-ha. Staten Island? He goes, yeah. So he worked with me. So we get to the finish. Boom, I do everything right. We get to the back. And it was like going from 7th grade to graduating high school in 10 minutes.
Wow.
Because their attitudes totally changed. George went, kid, you were great. And I said, screw Mr. Steele. I said, George, you could have told me. He goes, never. I've been doing this for 40 years. I never planned a damn thing. You didn't know it was coming, and you were great. And I'm like, well, I kind of did know, but I didn't say nothing. But to tell you the truth, that was the first step that I took. That I never had a problem with a veteran after that. Bundy, Santana, any of the other veterans I ever worked with, Tugboat, never a problem, because word gets out. If there's a guy that can handle himself, because there's a lot of managers, don't touch you. No, you can't. If he's coming after you, you're part of the show. You got to take it. That's my mantra with that. But so what happened after the LIWF, that was Bobby basically said, I'm just going to concentrate on the school. So he opened the first school in Queens, but then that was only a short time. And he opened the main school, which ended up being on 940 Jamaica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. Now, this was a tough neighborhood. It's right across the street from the Franklin K. Lane High School. A good neighborhood as far as working. There was some good working people there. They used to come to the shows all the time. We always had good turnout, because you got to understand something about the doghouse. Once we got up flowing, we ran nonstop every Saturday night for about 2 years plus, maybe more, because I left. Once I started getting paid gigs, I didn't want to. I wanted to open up the door for the other managers coming up in the doghouse. So I kind of walked away, which was another good story. They basically destroyed me, and I got homicide. They beat the hell out of me, and they stretchered me out. And Havoc said even next week, one kid came to Havoc and said, "Did John Shane get out of the hospital yet?" I mean, it was a great way to end the ending.
Yeah.
But to play in the doghouse every week without fail, every Saturday night, and then they started having student shows on Friday night. And why that is important is that we're doing something every week. We got good. We just got good. We just, and we worked the hit squad all the time. We worked the Dirty Rotten Scout. We worked these teams that once we got on the indies, we had no problem working them because we knew what we were doing. Now, the Doghouse produced the hit squad, though Homicide was a wrestler before them, but this is, where he really started training guys.
Yeah.
And when you talk about guys talking about they're a Homicide trained wrestler, 9 times out of 10, they came out of the Doghouse. Papa Don, Low-Key, the Hit Squad, Monster Mac, Mafia. I could go down the line. I mean, the guys that came out of that place, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, the Elm Street Kids. We had a lot of fun at that place because we were learning, and we also put on damn good shows. And I actually got a lot of experience because we were doing something weekly. So I started helping out with writing the angles out, coming up with finishes, coming up with ideas. And Homicide and I would bounce stuff off each other all the time, And Homicide was a great heel, but he started getting a lot of babyface cheers because, he's local Brooklyn kid, whatever. So we decided to make me a baby face, which is kind of hard to do. But I brought my young son at the time, and we kind of did an angle where he took him to Coney Island and all. So Homicide, then Homicide goes, John, I want to be a heel again. We got to so we'll throw this stuff back and forth and have a lot of fun. But to say this about Homicide, without a doubt, the toughest guy in the ring, and will never tell you what he feels about you, but you hear about it from other people. You know, he'd never come up and say you're the best, you know, but you hear it from other people, and you know what? He's the toughest guy I ever met in the business, and a guy who I've learned a lot from. And God bless him now with what he's doing with the NWA, and you know what? And now he's retired. But yeah, he did a lot of great stuff for the indie scene in Long Island and in New York, and he's the king of New York as far as the indie scene, as far as I'm concerned. But you talk about the guys that came out of that. So once the Doghouse, so what happened is Bobby had a lot of heat from the Athletic Commission, because you got to understand, back in those days, Chris, you needed a license.
Yeah, I think do you still do?
You don't need a license to wrestle anymore in New York. McMahon ended that. But when I first broke in, you needed a wrestling license, and it was $25 a year. And you went down to the Athletic Commission in New York, and you took a physical, and you got the EKG, and you got all that stuff, and then you got your license, and you had to show it, and they wouldn't let you wrestle without it back in the day. And what happened was the Athletic Commission cracked down on Bobby, because even though some of us were licensed, a lot of us weren't. And there was a show we did one time. We did a show at a Hooters, and me, Homicide, and two other guys were hiding in the walk-in from the Athletic Commission who came. We just stashed. We were in a walk-in, freezing our asses off as the commission's checking licenses, you know. So because they would check licenses and leave, you know. It was just a moneymaker for the state. That's all those licenses were. Because you got to understand, way back in the 1800s and the 20s, they needed stuff like that to protect, you know, bare knuckle fighters and bars and stuff like that. But it's really not needed, you know. And they gave us the same medical thing that they gave boxers, like checking your head, and, you know, I mean, come on, we're wrestlers, you know what I mean? So
is it still in New York that you need like a doctor at all shows too? Is it the same way then too?
Yes, but really, yeah, everybody's got to get their blood pressure checked and all of that. You know, I mean, they still do that, because even though wrestlers don't need licenses, promotions do. So NYWC has a promoter's license. So if you want to promote, you can rent their license from them if you want, you know, but then they're responsible for it. Because there are certain things the Athletic Commission that is good, barricades and stuff like that, you know, stuff that safety violations. Yeah. But to tell you the truth, you know, I mean, they used to be, I remember when I first broke in, you know, I might be a little high on the blood pressure, and okay, gotta drink some water and come back to me or whatever, because I'd be psyched, I'd be getting ready to go out. So my BP might be a little bit. So you'd have to come up with little. We'd have guys, you know, eat aspirin. I mean, guys do all kinds of stuff back in those days. But then after the LIWF, that Doghouse, you know, the Athletic Commission pretty much closed it down. But it was phenomenal, because it was great for the neighborhood. And like I said, we had a bodega. You know, kids used to come every week, and it was great. It was great for the community and everything. And that Doghouse Brotherhood stands to this day. If I see Low Life Louie or Homicide or Low Key, any of that bond is as strong as it was, because we worked real hard. You know what I mean? So, but what's funny, sometimes you run into a guy that says, "Yeah, I was Doghouse," and I'm like, I don't remember seeing you down there. You know, but you get that. You know, you get that. But that's a homage to Bobby, and there's talk the NYWC is going to put Bobby in the Hall of Fame, and I hope they do, because without the Doghouse, there's no New York wrestling connection. Because what had happened, there were some guys, John Kurse and some other guys, wanted to open up their own gym. So they opened it up in Long Island, but they got their feet wet at the Doghouse. That's the history of it. And John Kurse will be the first one to tell you that. So
there's a few things I asked you about. I didn't even get to the part where you said originally you never wanted to do the wrestling. Was there like something about the wrestling, or you just knew that managing, you could talk, all that stuff, you wanted to settle? Because you had the athletic background, baseball and all that.
Yeah, but I'm not athletic enough to do. But here's the other thing: I don't have good wind either. So I blow up you know, Homicide carried me through a hardcore match. Wow. He did. It's on YouTube. You can look it up. Yeah. Basically, I drove him crazy, because I went over every spot in the back again, because I'm like, yeah. But he could have really hurt me, but he didn't. And that, like I said, that my respect to him went way up after that. You know. But I'm not allowed to tell you how it finished, because I don't want to. because I always said I never bragged about beating Homicide, and I still won't, But it was an angle. We were bringing J Train in. We had done an angle where Homicide was when Homicide was still a babyface. We did an angle where J Train, he got J Train. They did some kid stuff, and J Train went to jail, and I bailed him out. And I said, if I bail you out, you got to go after Homicide for me. And that's kind of how that started. So he attacked Homicide at the end of my hardcore match, and that's how that angle whole started. And that's how the Hit Squad took off, because we had J Train wrestle all the members of the Hit Squad leading up to Homicide. So we built that angle, old school wrestling right there, 101. So,
I know you said the Power Twins helped you with it, but if you were to say, who is John Shane? Like, what were you going for? Because it was so unique. Like, everyone, managers at that time, everyone wanted to wear a suit and all that, but John Shane stood out.
I would say Bobby Heenan, probably the biggest influence, because what I loved about Heenan, and I will go on record as he's the greatest manager, and I'll put Cornette number 2, and those are the 2 guys I probably stole the most from, because we all steal from each other. I don't ever hear you say you don't, because you do. What I liked about, I never liked to wear the suit. I was never comfortable in the suit, and I always liked the flashy jackets, and and then I also added the scarf, because I figured I needed something to choke somebody out or do something with it. I started with a fanny pack, but that didn't work. So I used to work security at Westbury Music Fair, and there was a guy by the name of Engelbert Humperdinck from years ago, and he wore this black scarf, and he actually left it in the chute one night, and he left. So I'm like, can I have the scarf? And my boss goes, yeah, sure. So I started wearing this black scarf. And then if I wore a black jacket, I'd wear a red scarf. So the scarf was kind of my trademark. But as far as acting as a manager, it was more Heenan, because he made one quote that stuck to me that I never forgot. I manage like a wrestler, and I wrestle like a manager. And if that makes any sense to you, it made all the sense in the world to me. Mm-hmm. If you're grabbed, you should look out of sorts. You should be. And I was always a chicken shit heel, even though how big I was. I ran away from everybody. I ran away from women, ran away from everybody. But that's the way. But the thing was, what I loved about Heenan is he could make you laugh, and then he could piss you off. And when you saw the weasel suit things and the stuff like that he did, I said, yeah, if you make a fool out of yourself, you can get over, and I didn't care. What do I care? I don't know these people, whatever. It's wrestling, whatever, So we did a lot of wacky stuff like that, But Bobby's number 1.
You talk about,
real fast. I also got to also give credit to Fred Blassie, Lou Albano, and the Grand Wizard, because those are the first 3 that I saw that really influenced me. But if I had to give you top 3, Heenan, Cornette, and Blassie, those would be and my own spin, pretty much. Yeah.
Great big 3. And you mentioned, you talk about NYWC. What is just the atmosphere working for them? Because you look at companies even that are still going and thriving, NYWC is still in there. Okay.
What I like, what drew me to them in the beginning is they used to run out of the Deer Park Community Center I don't know dates anymore, Chris, a long time ago. But we used to work weekly. We used to do monthly shows at the Deer Park Community Center. They had great crowds. They had they did very well for themselves. But then they lost that place. But they found the Sportatorium, which is a warehouse in Deer Park. It's their own gym. They got their own ring. They have their own. It's a nice setup there. It's really nice. Their students. Their students are well trained. MJF worked a few shows there. I managed them, not there, but at Five Boroughs Wrestling. Come on, you got to help me out with some of these guys. My mind's blanking right now, but a lot of guys worked there early on.
Yeah.
Matthews and Myers. Mike Mondo was the first. Yeah. Was the first. Okay, let's talk about Mike Mondo. Okay, you're gonna have to cut this, but all right.
No, you're good.
All right. Let me tell you something about when I really started getting involved in NYWC, even a little bit more as far as working management a little bit. A 9/11, I did a 9/11 benefit in December of 2001. And it was at a school out in Long Island. And I was managing the Solution, and I was also managing Rocky Shore and his partner. And we went there, and we cut promos, and we did the shows and everything. We did our match. We had a great match. Intermission comes, and this young kid comes up to me and says, "Hey, John, my name's Mike. I'd love to get into wrestling. Do you know, is there a school nearby?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So I pull Curse over, introduce him, and then totally forget about it, because it happens a lot. Kids always come up to you and ask you. I had a guy come up to me with a big scar on his neck, and I'm like, "You crazy? What are you doing, man? I think I could do this. Yeah, sure." So, all right. So 6 months later, I'm working at George's Spotter Show. Now, George was a promoter in Spanish Harlem, in the barrio, in Spanish Harlem, and he had a lot of like carnival shows, like outdoor shows, big shows. A lot of fun working for George. But I go backstage, and I walk in, and the same kid walks up to me. "Hey, John, you remember me? I'm Mike." And I went, "Oh my God!" In 6 months, this kid was ready to do indie shows. That shows you how good he was. And like I said, I knew how good he was from the first time I saw him. So basically, around that time, the Doghouse guys had gotten a tryout with JCW, so I started working with JCW. And Simon Diamond told me because I told him about Mike Mondo, and he said that hit your star to that kid. The kid's going places. So I decided, and I knew Mike right from the beginning, hated doing promos. So I was like, I'll handle that. You just worry about what you got to do in the ring. I'll get the heat. I'll get anything we need to do. So that started a nice run with Mike. So Mike was like the first main guy coming out of the NYWC school. So we started working with those guys, Tony Nese, and there were a lot of guys from there, that came through that school, So Mike and I had a great run, not only in not so much in NYWC, but definitely in JCW and some other feds, and Espada's fed too. But it was great to hook up with him because he was live wire at the time. He used to do called gut check time, and he had some issues, but now he's come back stronger than ever. He's killing it in the NWA, and I'm real proud of him because he's a really good guy. And he deserves all the good stuff coming to him. Really, he's a good, really good guy. So and he was back in NYWC for a short time with me when I was doing, and I'd done some training there. I'd done some manager training with this kid, and I like to help out with the younger talent now.
Yeah.
I like to work with them, and it's funny because working with them. It's a few of them like CJ Bambino and Alan Alvarez will tell me, "Yeah, I hated you when I was a kid." You know what I mean? So, but that stuff's fun, when you talk about that stuff and the respect I get from the guys down there, from the FBI guys, and they're just phenomenal. They treat me so respectful and everything, and I can't say enough about them. Joey Conway, and there's some young guys coming up that you're really gonna be keeping an eye on, and it's nice that they respect me and take care of me and everything. But I feel sometimes when I'm down there, I'm like, I'm just an old memory hanging on. But hey, I love to talk wrestling. I love to go and bullshit with those guys.
You've done a lot in wrestling. You talk about NYWC, the connections you made, but is that the first place you start helping out behind the scenes, like with the book, ideas and all that, or no?
No. The first place was JCW.
Okay.
Well, actually, the Doghouse, but the Doghouse was no pay or anything like that.
So that always interests you, that aspect of pro wrestling?
Oh yeah, because I love that stuff. Because again, you see another thing, Chris. Wherever you're needed, that's what you do. Okay. I was able when I was in NWA Cyberspace. I wrote a column for the program and for the website. If you can do something, when you see a need, you step in, and then you make yourself indispensable. And when you make yourself indispensable, you're going to be a part of every show, whatever it is. Maybe it's flyering. Maybe it's, a lot. They use the students to flyer everybody, selling tickets, whatever you got to do. Don't get me started on the ticket sellers, but we'll get to that. But if you see a need, you step in. And that's what I do. So when I was doing all that stuff at LIWF, when I went to JCW, Danny Moff told Ricky O, he said, John's pretty good when it coming up with angles and ideas and everything like that. So that's when that started. So Ricky O came to me, and then we started coming up with finishes. And then I got on the booking committee with Simon Diamond, and there's another guy who I have nothing but respect for. We share a love of Notre Dame football and the Yankees, but he is an unbelievable. Sitting under his learning tree was something, and I learned a lot about. He was the one that said, "Hey, John, the show's got to be no longer than 2.5 hours, and we send the people home happy." Stuff I didn't even think about. 2.5 hours, no 3 hours, no 4 hours, no kill the crowd. Get in and send them home happy. So I always kept that in the back of my mind. So we would send them home happy, then do something in the back for another promo that we would show next month or whatever. So I learned so much from him. Beauty shots, anything things like that. You know what I mean? He knew what he was talking about, and I learned a lot. And then working with him is coming up with angles and ideas, lot. And so a lot of respect towards Simon Diamond. But that's when I started doing stuff, and I had Ricky gave me a pretty free reign in the JCW. And that leads to the Jay Lethal story. I'm sure you want to hear about that.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So Jay Lethal comes to JCW. He was an 18-year-old kid, nice guy, and I always liked Jay. And to this day, I like Jay. I haven't seen him in forever, but he's a great guy. And the only thing with him, he was a great wrestler from day one. He had all the moves. He was very good from day one. His problem was his character. It was milquetoast. There was nothing to him. He would come out and shake everybody's hand. It was a weird type of kind of thing that he did. But again, he's 18. He doesn't know what he's doing yet, right? So I noticed we did a lot of shows in Passaic, New Jersey at Lucky's Nightclub, and we had a great crowd at Lucky's Nightclub. And I noticed one show that his mom, since he is an 18-year-old kid, his parents came to a lot of shows. So I noticed his mom would really get into him and cheer him and all this. So I get to him one day. I said, Jay, you think your mom might want to be part of an angle? He goes, I don't know. Let's talk to her. So we bring her back. We talk to her, and she's into it. So I come up with this idea. I said, all right, why don't we light this feud between Mondo and Jay, and we really light it off. I said, what if we do something where I get in the face of your mom and you come out? So he was all into it. So we set it up, and it was a Sunday afternoon, so it was a lot of kids. We got a lot of heat. And so she's in the front row. So I'm cutting the promo up, and I have live wire with me. And I say, and she keeps, John Chain. So I said, hey, let's talk. You got a problem? I roll out to her. I said, you got a problem with me? What's your problem? Yeah, I'm Jay Lethal's mother. So the crowd's all behind her. Got people behind her pointing at me and all this. So I said, Jay Lethal's mother. I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to give you a Mother's Day gift next week. You're going to spend all day with Jay for Mother's Day. Isn't that nice? But it's going to be at his hospital bed. And she slaps me, right? Now, I told Jay before the match, I said, listen, it's your mother. You better come out with your ass on fire. I don't care. I got your mother here. All right.
Yeah.
So you come out with your ass on fire. And he did. He came out. He wipes me out. He wiped out Mondo. And he was like, John Chen. He's screaming it. And then Livewire went. And then so it started a mega feud between the two. And it was awesome. We did matches where I was handcuffed to Jay. When my guy, I mean, we did all kinds of different angles. So finally, at like 6 months, Chris, this went on, and it was great.
Was it easy to involve his mom? Did she want to?
Yes, she was 100% into it, and that makes it even better.
Yeah.
So I told her, give me a slap, don't worry about it, whatever. So now we get to the blow-off match, right? So I'm all excited. Ricky O goes, I got a stip. I'm like, all right, what's the stipulation? So he calls me up. I got it. I said, okay, a lumberjack match. I go, what? What are you kidding me? I'm a manager. Eh? You cannot manage a lumberjack match. It's impossible. So I said, Ricky, we can't do it. He goes, no, John, I already said it. I put it in, I put it out there. It's what it's going to be. And I'm like, shit. I'm like, all right, I'll make this work somehow. So I started to figure it out. So I called Shirley up and I said, I'll work it out. Don't worry about it. So the day of the match comes, and what we do basically, I had an opening promo where the Boricuas chased me out of the ring. The Los Boricuas. Tony Blaze and Warpath, two Doghouse guys I worked with. I love them, work them forever.
Yeah.
And Warpath he's down in Florida. I'm still keeping contact a little bit with him. So we had done a match where they chased me out of the ring, and I fall out of the ring, and I sell a knee injury, but I sell like a legitimate knee injury. Like I need somebody to help me to the back. It wasn't a wrestle sell. It was like a real sell. So I'm in the back, and we didn't tell anybody. So the only one who knew was one of the color commentary managers I worked with. He kind of knew because I was going over some stuff with him, but nobody let it slip. And the main Berkowitz, the main guy, the commentator had no idea. Mm-hmm. So the Lumberjacks come out, and we had done an angle earlier with the Solution where I turned on them, and they came out, they all in black with masks called Los Problemos. And then we had that angle for a while. So I said to Papa Don, I said, can I borrow the mask? And he did, and they had a black thing I put over, and then I changed my clothes. I even changed my shoes. So when the Lumberjacks walked out, I just mingled with the Lumberjacks, and I tried not to do anything that would give anybody away that it was me. So we do the match, and then as happens in every Lumberjack match, the Lumberjacks start fighting, and I make it look like I started them fighting, and then I roll in a ring with a chair, and basically I inadvertently screw Livewire, and Jay wins the match. And now they got me. So Mrs. Lethal, I had I'm a big Allman Brothers fan, and that was one of my things. I would wear Allman Brothers shirts and stuff. So I took my oldest that I didn't care about Allman Brothers shirt, and I take off the black thing, and they kind of knew. I took the mask off. So we're ready to blast Lethal. She comes, grabs a chair, and then of course Mondo loses the match, and she strips the shirt off. I'm wearing these Dice underwear or whatever I'm wearing.
Yeah.
These red socks. I mean, it's really. I went all out to be looking as foolish as I could. So they held me down, and I told her, I said, "You got to give me a slap." And I said, "Do not popcorn this slap. I can take a slap, Shirley. Don't worry about it." Well, she hauled off, Chris. Right, man. She got from freaking left field. Oh, I didn't see stars. I saw whole constellations. And you got like, wow. I go back, and Jay's giving me the boots, and I'm like, "Your mother's stiff. Your mother's stiff." So we get to the back. Everybody's popping because it was everything worked out phenomenally. She brings me ice. She felt so bad, but she was terrific. The angle was gangbusters. And the reason why I know the angle worked so well is 3 other feds used it after me, and I never got credit for it. But tell anybody that comes on and said they came up with that idea first, it was mine.
Wow.
But to see those two guys, work that program, and you could tell, that they're the goods in this business, and I was so happy to see how far Jay went with this, and I just, just a great guy, and he deserves everything that's coming his way, and I love the fact that he came up with that machismo stuff, and I mean all the stuff that was in him all that time, but he had to grow in the business, and it's just terrific to see.
You mentioned another company. Well, first, I guess one goes into the other. Didn't NYWC and Cyberspace have like a talent exchange in sort of a way?
Yeah, we did.
What was that like? Because on the indies, like you don't really like now it's like there's more indies, but like having a talent exchange is like pretty rare.
Well, the reason being, again, I was involved with both feds at the time, right? And the promoters at the time, Billy Firehawk was really was the promoter at Cyberspace. Now, Billy gets a lot of heat, but Billy always treated the boys well.
Yeah.
And he would overpay us. He would, he treated us great. And that other promoters get pissed at that because they're like, well, I can't pay what Bill, I don't want it. I should say, I can't pay. I don't want to pay what Billy pays. So, we just, I don't remember exactly, but we just came up with the idea, instead of having an invasion, why don't we just exchange talent? Why don't we do that? So we gave them Robert Roode against Josh Daniels one night in a flag match, and we got Myers and Matthews in a tag match with us. It was just to expose their talent to Jersey. That was the big thing. I wanted to try to bring some of their younger talent to Jersey that hadn't been exposed yet. That was, but those guys were well on their way. It wasn't so much they needed, but that's who Cyberspace wanted. If we were going to give you Robert Roode, we want your best two back. So it was something like that. So it worked for a few shows, but then Billy tragically passed away, and once Billy died, Fed went away, and that was a tough day because Billy died of diabetes. He was still a young man; he was in his 40s or whatever it was, and Billy's wife. We tried, me and Derek Gordon, who was another big guy in my career, worked for WCW, a brilliant mind in the business. And when he got the book, when we started Cyberspace, all right, I'm talking early 2000, whenever it was, I don't even know anymore, 2004, 3, 4, whatever. We're all melding together, Chris. I'm an old man. So basically, when we started it, he had a booker there. I'm not going to give his name, that nobody had any respect for, right? Nobody liked this guy, and they treated it like a joke. But once he brought Derek Gordon in, it all changed after that. Derek Gordon had real ideas. He had real, and we got along great. I mean, we used to have 3-hour phone calls to go over angles and ideas. And he's got an unbelievable mind for the business. He would come up with some great stuff. So we had a lot of fun. I'll give you an idea of how brilliant he is. All right, just to give you, we were having Cyberspace was having a big match. They were having a big cage match at the end, but they already had intermission. Now, usually you have intermission before the cage match, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, you're going to have 2 intermissions? He goes, John, I got it covered. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay. The match before the cage match was a street fight between Slick Wagner Brown and Rodney Mack. Remember Rodney Mack?
Yeah, I know them both.
Yeah, Jazz was with us too. I mean, Jazz was great. They had a street fight between the two, right? So, and of course, during the street fight, they take it outside. the guy starts setting the cage up. Brilliant, right? I mean, come on,
Genius.
right?
Yeah.
Who doesn't do that, right? So I was like, because I'm like, this is brilliant, you know. So that's the type of stuff that he used to do. And there's an angle, there's something. If you really want to see him do a deep dive on the CM Punk when we had CM Punk in a tag match, that's on YouTube too, where he talks about working with CM Punk. He didn't have too many positive experiences. I was on that show. I really can't tell you one way or another how Punk treated me. I remember we did what we had to do, and that was it. I don't really remember him doing anything. But according to Derek, he busted some balls, but I don't know, so I can't comment on it. But
Yeah.
Unbelievable guy as far as coming up with ideas and angles and storylines and all this stuff. So it was great working with him. But that's, it was a respectful talent exchange. It only lasted a couple of shows, but we wanted to do something different. We want to do the invasion angle. It's been done a million times. Do something like a talent exchange. When Billy came down, he got introduced to the crowd at NYWC. Same thing. We introduced the NYWC. There was a manager, Crusher Dugan, who was their #1 manager in NYWC. So we had respect on all sides. So, and it worked, and again, it got guys over in Jersey, and Robert Roode got to work on Long Island for the first time. So it was fine.
Wow. What's the atmosphere like being a part of cyberspace? Because I've interviewed Mike Tobin, Josh Daniels, Mo Sex, and Mario Baccara. Like, everyone loves talking about cyberspace. They all say it was like just such a special time.
It was, because we were working with America's Most. We had a great feud with America's Most Wanted, and I loved working those guys. And Mike Tenay was part of it, and he was on the commentary, and we did angles with Bill Apter. And I mean, this was so much fun because Billy had no problem spending his money. He never did, and maybe that makes him a money mark. But for us, it was the greatest time in my life. And to have the respect of not only being a manager, and then they paid me to be on the booking committee. I was making more money in wrestling with cyberspace than I made or ever made after that, because I was lucky enough to not only be a manager and be respected enough that they would give me these angles and everything. We had Piper come in for it, shoot. We had a lot of people coming in, plus the TNA guys. We had Jeff Jarrett, we had Abyss, we had AJ Styles, and we had a lot of great talent, and it was fun working. And they didn't have a problem working with us, with Michael Shane, and it was fun. The cyberspace shows at the Wayne PAL, we always had good crowds. We always had, and like I said, Billy paid us well, so we worked for Billy. Nobody just saw it as a payday. Everybody wanted to put on a good show. And to tell you the truth, Chris, if Billy had lived, they might still be around today because he was that committed to it. Wow. And let me just tell you what type of guy he is. All right, you want to talk about what a mark he is, right? When we did the talent exchange, and Robert Roode came to Long Island again. I live on Long Island, so I picked Robert up and took him wherever he goes. And then Billy and his wife flew in, and something happened, and Billy had to fly back to Vegas that night. But for some reason, he didn't have his credit card or whatever. So he said, "John, can I float flights on my American Express?" Now you got to understand that I was going through a divorce at the time. I didn't have that much money,
Yeah.
So I said, "I'm going to need this back." He goes, "No, you'll get it. You'll get it this week, John. I guarantee you." So the thing came to the airfare came to like $1,200 for both flights or something, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I get a check for $1,700 later in the week, and I said, "Billy, this is too much." He goes, "No, take it. You helped me out of a jam." That's the type of guy he was. I mean, God, I would have just been happy if he gave me the $1,200. I mean, give me $1,700. Come on. I mean, who does that? I mean, really. So again, a loss to all of us, guys like me, Tobin, the Solution. We were really, and we had the one memorial show for him, and we thought we'd carry it forward. But then some other people got into his wife's Daisy's ear, and it didn't work. And people were just looking to milk her, and she was smart enough to back away from that. So it ended on that. But what I will say about it is, we'd come up with some great ideas. Like I had a big feud with Sonny, and then I won the feud, but we came up with the angle, but make her a commissioner, then she can still screw with me. So but that last show, when the last show was a blow off match, it was Rhino and Billy Gunn, and loser's manager retires. It was me and Sonny. Right. So we won I threw a fireball at Billy, it's on YouTube if you want to see it.
Yeah.
I threw a fireball at Billy Gunn. We win the match, and she's got to retire. I'm all happy and all this. So, but then Billy died after that show. But our next angle was she was going to be announced as the new commissioner. I was going to lose my shit. She was going to be getting me back through all of that. So that was where because we not only with right angles. We would also long term a lot of it too. So again, we were looking for long term storylines,
Yeah.
So and it was good. And she was working with Son. There was no issues with me. We had no problem. Everything was fine. She had no issues. I never saw any real ego problems with her or anything. We did what we had to do. But I wrestled a match with her that I hate. It did not do a good job.
From that time, like even just in general, is there like a storyline that you have your hand in some way that like you're so proud of that maybe it was like a long term or like what's the storyline that you're most proud of that you had?
Probably the Jay Lethal Mike Mondo one.
Yeah.
That's probably because I really had to use my head on that one. And you know what? As great as they were still young, so they had to be directed in certain areas, which is fun. And it's fun to see how far they've come. So I would say that probably, so
Yeah.
working with them. But I also worked with I'd also help out not only that, but also I'm also very proud of work I've done with the young managers too. Guys, when I was at the Doghouse, I did manager training on Wednesday nights and having
Now I gotta
and
ask before you continue, what was like the scene? Were there a lot of managers in this scene when you were around the business or no?
it depended on where you went. Like
Okay.
the ones in the Northeast that everybody knew was pretty much me and Rob Dimension. Those were the two ones. And I'm not talking about like managers that work one fed. I'm talking about managers that work different feds.
Yeah.
And it was basically me and Rob Dimension, So then J Train came along and there were guys like Mr. Big and Johnny O, I think his name was, that worked for Frank Goodman, but they were basically Frank Goodman's managers.
Okay.
But to work multiple feds, there weren't too many of us, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
Because you needed a wrestler that would take you along with you, okay? Because you just can't say I'm going to be a manager and they put you with one guy. You got to be able to work with these guys and be comfortable with them. So the Solution took me to a lot of places, and Rocky Shore did too. But a lot of places didn't want me, because they had their own manager, and you got to respect that. That's fine, So I never mind. I mean, the Solution was managed by Miss Michelle, and I think ICW. They're managed by Pierre and JAP, Johnny D, and a few other places. But if you ask Papa Don, Solution always fired best when it was the three of us.
Yeah.
So
What's the conversation to pair you with the Solution?
what's the what?
What's like the conversation of putting John Shane with the Solution, or how does that happen?
Well, that goes back to the Doghouse days. Basically, I came up with the idea when I was working at the Doghouse, and I needed somebody to manage. And I managed Chris Michaels, old WWE guy, and Jay Lethal and whatever. But I wanted to put a student team together that I could stay with, right? And again, I go back to that thing where, guys who need help don't do promos very well and all that. So I met this guy who I hit it off with very well by the name of Ed Toscano, became Havoc. Havoc was a veteran. He wasn't a green kid. He had worked for the Samoan school, but the Samoan school was in Pennsylvania and he lived in Long Beach. So it was a pain in the ass for him to go back and forth. So he was looking for a school. So he fell into the Doghouse. And we just got along. We just did. We had a lot of the same interests. He's one of the funniest guys I've met in the business. And I said, you know what? I said, my idea is to do this. I said, I want us to get work outside of here. And what's the best way to do that? I said, putting a tag team together. And so we're very few established tag teams back then. So I figure if we put them together at the Doghouse, then we can go to other places because you always need tag teams.
Mm-hmm.
Tag teams, not just two guys you throw together, two guys that can work together.
Yeah.
Because putting just two guys together is fine, but there are certain things that a team does that you can, come on, Midnight Express, come on. I mean, you can see, the Road Warriors, you see the stuff that they do together. So we had found somebody first, but it really wasn't working out too well. And then somehow, I think it was Homicide and Ed that said, how about Papa Don? And they had Papa Don and Havoc had wrestled each other like a dozen times at the Doghouse, so they knew each other and everything. So we put it together. And it worked. And it was a heel tag team, and it worked. And we started feuding at the Doghouse with the Hit Squad, either Mafia and Monster Mac or Low-Key and Homicide, or so we worked with a lot of different teams, and it was just comfortable. It worked out well, and so that's how we put them together. And Papa Don came up with the name of the Solution, and we came up with a lot of different names. I'm not too good at coming up with names. I mean, really, John Shane, come on, but. It was Dave Power that gave me the sure thing gimmick because we were coming up with this was back in '95. I mean, like you said, they hated Sweet Papa John. So which is an old Johnny Winter blues song name, Sweet Papa John. Yeah, come on. Right? So you know what the first suggestion was? That Craps Callahan. And I'm like, oh, because they said, we'll make you from Atlantic City. I said, how about from Vegas? No, Atlantic City, because everybody knows Vegas. Atlantic City. And then eventually I came from Vegas. But yeah, Craps Callahan. I'm like, no, hell with that. All right. So I said, my father said, don't use Shay. So I said, all right. So I changed it to John Shane. And the Sure Thing. And it was Dave Power that came up with the Sure Thing gimmick, So we thought of like a gambler guy, that type of guy, So that's what we ran it with, and it made it work, So,
What's the solution match you point someone to?
there's a few of them. Versus America's Most Wanted, probably.
Okay.
There's a few of them though. I mean, oh God, you got me on the spot here. Here's one for you. The Solution versus the SAT at Cyberspace.
Mm-hmm.
I had turned on them. I show up at the end and they get jumped by the Outlast Killers. Remember those guys?
Oh yeah.
Outcast Killers. You talk to those guys?
No, I haven't yet, but yeah.
I don't know what happened to them, but they had a great look. And one of their guys got injured. I can't remember these guys' names, but we brought them into Cyberspace because we had done a feud where I turned on the Solution at NYWC and Derek Gordon in Cyberspace says, let's continue that. So we did it in Cyberspace as well. And I needed a tag team. And I had seen the Killers. And I said, these are the guys. Another team that didn't like to do promos, another team. And we had, and I think the first match we brought them out, they beat All Money is Legal. And then when the Solution wrestled the SAT, I had them jump. They were just about to beat the SAT with the Problem Solver, and I sent them out, and I distracted the referee. So that set the feud between the two of them. But that was also part of that last show with Rhino and the Fireball, and Billy had died after that show because that was the next feud, was going to be the Solution and those guys. You know what I mean? So we had worked a lot of, and again, also was as Derek's idea was when at the memorial show before we knew we weren't going to go any further, he put the heavyweight title on Havoc and he put the internet title on Papa Don, and I was going to be bringing guys in to go after them. That was the thing. So I was going to bring in guys in from whoever, so just to beat those guys. So we would be able to bring in some really established talent. I can't give you a name right now because it didn't happen, but somebody established to go against them. Maybe they just almost beat them, and then kind of like the old territories, how you establish your younger talent, and we'd get them over. But it just didn't go. It just didn't work. So
mentioning talent too. When I was talking to somebody, I told him he was interviewing you. He had so many high things to say about you. How does the chemistry or the connection or you managing Mike Tobin happen?
Oh Jesus! Well, first of all, Tobin is a big Yankee fan, and that helps, because I'm a big Yankee fan.
Yeah.
You're talking when they were winning right and left here. You know what I mean? The late 90s. So we'd wear our Yankee gear. Slick Wagner Brown was a big Boston Red Sox fan, or Hanson so we'd rag on those guys. I had a lot of fun with it. But Tobin and I, again, we have that Irish blue collar connection. We just do. He's from City Island in the Bronx. You know what I mean? He's a New York guy, boogie down Bronx, and we just got along. We just got along. But I'll tell you, the one thing, you never knew what he was going to say in a promo. And he could kill me in a promo. And I would say, you got to give me a heads up. I'll give you a perfect example. You're probably too young, but there was a show called Life Goes On about a Downs kid named Corky, right? Mm-hmm. So we had done a match. We had done a four-way elimination. So if you get pinned, you get eliminated. And we're setting up a feud between Mike Tobin, because he was the internet champion, and a guy by the name of Ken Scampy.
Okay.
You probably don't know him. He was an indie worker by the name of, his real name was Berger, Kenny Berger. I think it was Berger, whatever. But this guy was really a smart guy. I mean, he really was. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
But he came up with this gimmick called Ken Scampy, which he basically played a dumb skull. He would play an idiot. That's basically what, he would go, hey, whenever he did something. Fine, right? So we had a match with them. Yeah, right? So he pins Tobin, right? Now, later on in that match, I got hit with something. So I got a towel over my head as we're doing the promo, right? So we go to the back. So promo, he's doing a very angry promo, and he tells the guy, and I'm holding the thing, right? He goes, I can't believe I just got beat by Corky from Life Goes On. Now I went, because if you know the reference, you're laughing. I'm like, oh, I'm a Tobin, you can't find. I go, he would love to do that. He would come up with something. I'm like, it's like, oh, because I took pride in not breaking during promos. But I mean, but to work with him, he again, it's all familiar. If you're familiar with somebody, you get a hook and a leg, whatever you need to do. He knew we were working. And one of the worst angles that they came up with. Now I gotta, I don't take too much credit for this, but was we had done Mike Tobin's what was it, Legends retire, like we would wrestle Legends, and he would always lose, but we would screw like D'Lo Brown and Billy Gunn and whatever, and we'd done this he had this plaque where we'd put his name on. He ends up hitting the guy with the plaque. It was just an angle that really wasn't going too far, but we made the best of it. You know what I mean? And it was fun. It was fun working D'Lo. It was fun working Nikolai Volkov. It was fun working, the guys that were Billy Gunn. It was fun working that stuff, And again, when you have a good match and they thank you, and then that just adds to your account that you're on the right track. You're doing the right thing. You're not getting yelled at. You screwed this up. You didn't do that. And then we also had you also learn, again, it's going back to the old vaudeville days, Chris. Back in vaudeville, they did like 9 shows a day. So if something went wrong, they knew how to cover it. And when you work with guys so long, if something goes wrong, you know how to cover it. You know how to improvise. And once you get to that point, you've made it. Once you get to the point where nothing that happens in that ring is going to throw you off, if God forbid a rope breaks, which did happen, a rope, you make it work. We'll figure it out. So that's the beauty of working with guys that and that's the problem. I think it's hard for young managers. I believe if somebody wants to get into managing, that's to find a wrestling school that has young talent that they can work with along the way, so they learn along with their young talent learn. So again, but he's got to be able to speak right from the jump, though. He's got to be able to cut a promo. If you can't cut a promo, you can become a referee or something, because that you have to be able to, get across your point one way or another. You have to, that's job one.
Now, could Tobin cut a promo, or was it through like just the friendship that you started getting paired with him?
No, you know what? We had worked a few times. And he was friends with Papa Don and Havoc. So, no. I didn't hog the promos. I never did.
Yeah.
If you want any of my promos, I start it, then give something to the boys, and then I usually put a bow on it. That's usually how I do it. So I never overstepped anybody. And I remember when I worked at Rhino, I said to him, listen, man, if you think I'm stealing any heat, please tell me. He goes, but he was like, John, don't worry about it. He won't be able to steal any heat from me. You know what I mean? So, I always would talk to the guys and say, okay, if I do this, you got a problem, so you have to lay all that stuff out. That's important. But again, it's best with the guys you're used to. That's the best. And then you can do it in your sleep. Really, because they knew Havoc and Papa Don knew if they put a headlock on somebody and sat behind it, the other guy would distract the referee. I'd pop up and throw the scarf and it's choke him out and give me the scarf back, and I'd run away. So all that stuff just became. So I didn't have to talk about it. Again, you hear Flair talk about it. We didn't even talk about it because you're so used to it. It's no big deal.
Was it with Tobin that you got to work with Candido? Because I know he worked Candido in Cyberspace.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I didn't manage Tobin against Candido in Cyberspace. Candido was there in the beginning of it until he tragically passed away. And I've done promos with Chris, but I don't think I've worked a match with him, to tell you the honest. Looking back, I don't think I've shared many locker rooms with him. Great guy, funny guy. Always had a line for somebody, and it was we did the Chris Candido Memorial show for him at Cyberspace because he passed away when he was still running with Cyberspace, and it was we all got a chance to talk about him and all this, and I said it that day. I still say it. It's hard to hear that AC/DC song without thinking of him,
Yeah.
Because Back in Black, you think of Chris Candido right off, So yeah. Great talent, and he's missed, but I can honestly say I never worked a match with him.
But I know you talk about being that utility player, that if there's an opening that you're going to strive on the opportunity. Backstage interview and all that stuff, did that come natural to you, or how did the opportunities first start doing that?
I mean, interviewing other people?
Yeah.
Hey, it was a need. I just did it.
Was there a company you started at doing it?
Well, the Doghouse, and then
Yeah.
JCW. Well, JCW is where I really got my feet wet because Ricky O was cool enough to let me run. I mean, he kind of understood that. Let John go. If he's got if I have a problem with what he does, I'll tell him. So I started doing those backstage interviews, and again, I'm gonna tell you something about JCW. I mean, Ricky O was ahead of his time. You know, he's in Nashville now. I hope he's doing well. I mean, we had some issues, but and nothing that's really important. But he let me pretty much do what I wanted, which was fun. So I started doing those backstage interviews that you see with Low Key and the Road Warriors and all those guys. That was all JCW. You know, Ricky O brought in the Moondogs 2000, Molson and his partner, whose name is escaping me, and you know, he brought the Road Warriors in, and what they would do is like he would work with Goodman. Goodman would bring the Road Warriors in, and they'd split the trans, and they would use them like twice, you know, kind of deal.
Smart, yeah.
So the hit squad worked them at Goodman, then drove them to JCW, and we had them there. But yeah, working, and then you just say, hey man, can I do a quick interview with you? And like, yeah. And it was a Dennis Carluzzo show, I think, that we had the Road Warriors on, and we were able to, you know, they put over Dennis, you know, which was fine. So
yeah. Looking at everything in your career, I mean, obviously being a manager, you've talked about interactions with Jay Lethal's mom or anything, but is there like any crazy fan interactions where you got like real heat or something that sticks out?
oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah, let's talk. Okay, the first one, there's two I always bring up. There's two I think about. The first one was at a wrestler's father's catering hall in Long Island. I'm not going to give you his name, but anybody involved knows it. So basically, he had a ring set up, and we would have matches, and he would bring in the local guys, and we'd have matches. We had about 100 and change on these matches, and this was like maybe the third one we did at the catering hall. The second one I don't remember, so we got pretty used to it. So I was managing Rocky Shore. Now Rocky I also used, you know, early on I used to drive with Rocky, and we used to set up the ring, help him set up the ring, and I learned all I had to set up rings. And Rocky would wrestle, and then I would be, you know, used as a manager with the match. So so we would set up the ring and all that. So we were having this match. The Rocky used to get a lot of heat because back then the Rocky Sucks chants were big. So, you know, he just jumped on that.
Yeah.
And Rocky was a smaller guy, and we used to wrestle Kid USA. I don't know if you know Ahmad.
Yeah.
Kid USA had this great look, and we got a lot of heat just screwing with him because, you know, not that athletic looking guy, and his manager fucking with him. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
You know, we used to get a lot of heat with Rocky. Rocky sucks, and Rocky was very underhanded in his. I mean, he really got a lot of heel heat. So we would set the place on fire between the both of us. So we're wrestling this guy, little Larry, and I pop up on the apron, and I think Larry hits me down, and I take my usual apron bump, and I'm laying there selling, and I feel these stiff kicks to the back of my neck, and I'm like, who the hell is kid? And I think it's a worker, right? I think it's Larry or something. And I look up, and it's this like 15-year-old kid, and I go, why? And he grabs my scarf, and he rips it off my neck, and I get up, and I get right in his face. I go, what the hell? And his father or his brother is in front of me, and all of a sudden I'm surrounded, you know, and I'm like, oh shit, right? Tell you, I'm not a fighter, Chris. I'm telling you, I'm not a fighter. You talk to anybody I went to school with. I'm 0-12 in schoolyard fights. So I'm like, Rocky. If you hear Rocky tell the story, he tells it a little funnier than I am. And we had actually another wrestler friend of mine, TNT, small little guy. He was in crutches, and he's coming over to help me, but there's nobody other than him. So Rocky and I had to literally fight our way to the back. We literally had to brawl our way to the back. Now, the booker says, you guys, and Rocky got really heat. He said, I've learned from Bundy that if any of the boys are in trouble, the locker room empties out. It doesn't matter. So the promoter goes, you guys got too much heat. And he kept everybody back. He wouldn't let them go out. So, because there were a few guys, Jimmy Deranged, a few other guys that wanted to go out there that didn't go out. So they go, you got too much heat. And Rocky goes, John almost got killed out there. What the hell were you doing? And I said, bullshit. I said, no, you had barricades up. So I learned a lesson. You got to have barricades up. And if they're not, there better be big guy security guards. I'll lead you to story number 2. So I told you about George Espada. Now, George would have these shows in the barrio in the Spanish Harlem area of Bronx, of Manhattan. So we'd have what we'd call these project shows. You're talking these huge buildings with like 800 apartments, whatever. But in the middle was a courtyard, and we had the ring set up. and we had our matches, and they were great people. Don't get me wrong; everybody treated us great. And I'm talking about the people in the back, you know, the organizations. So you're talking, it's like a block party with like I want to say like 300-400 kids around the ring.
Yeah.
Right. So tough inner city kids, I might add. Now we always said when we did a New York show, we always said we were from Chicago, and we always hit on New York, and that's kind of what we did. You know, because we were from New York if we worked anywhere else, but you know, once we were in the city, we said we're from Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So we go out and we're wrestling the Guardian Angel, Tony Rambo. Now Tony's a great guy. We love Tony. Tony's a good guy. And their angels walk them to the ring. They do this whole big thing, and then we get walked to the ring by the angels. We have the match, and of course we cheat, scoundrels that we are, and we guzzle Tony Rambo, and we beat on him and we beat him down, and basically roll him out of the ring, and we win. Well, New York sucks. We're the best. And the Guardian Angels are now carrying Tony out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now the referee goes, "You guys got to leave." We look around. There's no security. There's no, all the kids are like, you can see they got blood in their eye. One kid's got a baseball bat. He's banging it on the concrete. And I'm like, no, we ain't leaving. Havoc goes, "We're not going. Get the Guardian Angels back here." Referee goes, Guardian Angels come back. And we go, we were scared. You know, I mean, I'm telling you, you know, I mean, and I miss that type of heat in the business. That type of heat is gone today. And I miss that. But that was the only 2 times that I really felt that something bad could happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. And when you hear the old timers, like Cornette has a million stories about stuff like that. But I wish I could have experienced it a little bit more, you know, to get that type of heat. I remember one time we worked in a Spada show, and again, the Boricuas were the local heroes. Everybody loved Warpath, and the problem was, as much as I love Tony the other guy, Warpath, and Tony, was that he would get up and do a promo. We'd beat the hell out of him, and we'd walk in the back, and he'd get up and cut a promo. So the promoter goes, "He's got to stop that." And George goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Why don't we handcuff him to the bottom ring? Why don't we do that?" He goes, "Yeah, that'll teach him, right?" So I think it was Tony Blaze. Yeah, that was his name, Tony Blaze. So we get out there. We're hitting him with chairs and everything, right?
Yeah.
This is a Friday night in a church, just so you know, right? We handcuff him to the bottom ring. We're beating the hell out of him, right? We go to the back. It's intermission, right? They're carrying him out and all this, right? So now Papa Don, I think it was, is like, you know, grabbing his pictures. We're going to head out for intermission. George goes, "No. You cannot go out there. It's too dangerous. They'll kill you." So we were like, "All right, we'll stay back here. You know, we're not going to make any merch money tonight. We'll stay back here." But that's, you know, but I miss that. I miss that in the business today. I really do. You know, I mean, granted, I'm old school. I'm kayfabe. I'm all of that stuff. So when I see wrestlers thanking each other, it doesn't sit well. Do I like the behind the scene things the E is doing? No, I don't like that. But I understand that's where we've come. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to understand, back in the day, you know, like let's talk the WWE before the internet and everything. If I saw like you know, Brody and Bruno at the Nassau Coliseum like tonight, they'll do that same match tomorrow in Boston. And you won't know it's the same match because there was no internet. There was no way of, you know, there might be results. Bruno beats Broza, but there would be no, you know, now every match is taped, you know what I mean? And every match is, so, you know, it's and again, that's the problem, I think, because they can't carry that match all through. They can't keep doing that. So if let's say Punk and Rollins, they can't do the same match all around the country that the old timers could get away with because you just can't do it.
Would you say that like that to you, like that's the biggest difference in the business from when you first started to right now? Because like you said, you've seen a lot of it evolve, no matter the situation, but is that the biggest thing you'd say?
I'll explain it. Okay.
Yeah.
Back when I broke in and back when I watched wrestling, the house shows would, TV would promote your house shows, especially the bigger shows like the Garden or the Coliseum, whatever shows were coming up, they promoted the live events. That's what they did, right? So they would move from I explained, Ricky Steamboat and I talk about this in the YouTube video if you want to look at that.
Yeah.
But it goes from promoting the TV, promotes your house shows. So TV is to get the house shows. If you remember back in those days, they didn't give you much on TV. It was all squash matches. You had to go out to but as time went on, then house shows and TV became, you know, fodder for pay-per-views. So everything's working towards the pay-per-views. But that was before the internet. So the two guys that are going to work at WrestleMania can work in California, and nobody before a small crowd, and nobody would know. Now they got to do it all down in the Performance Center, I guess, because the secret's out. But but that's the biggest change, because then now TV feeds the pay-per-view now. That's what it's doing. It's feeding the pay-per-view. But I think they're starting to realize, because they're hearing it now, they got to start doing more house shows, because that's the way that you can make mistakes. You can try
things
different
out.
things.
Yeah.
You can have fun too. They have more fun on the house shows than they do I'm telling you, they do, because you can get away with more stuff. And I think the younger talent is missing out on that. And plus, I was taught very early on, you don't mess with kayfabe. You don't screw around with it. I mean, even to tell you, even when I was in the business with Johnny Valiant, and I took him when I was wrestling against him. Later on, I did a match at Cyberspace where they brought him in, and I was a heel to his babyface. I drove him to the show, but I had to drop him in the back. You know what I mean? I mean, we kept that, and I still think it's important, and you should keep it. You should keep it. It's an important part of the business. And again, I think that's what hurts managers today, the lack of kayfabe. You know what I mean? I think that's what hurts it. And I always look out for the managers, man. That's always.
Now, when you talk about your career, you mentioned originally you talked Mick Foley. You said when you seen him on TV, then you realized like there's something that eventually you were going to get involved in. You mentioned that you gave him a tape. So is this all these years later? Or how does this happen?
Okay. No, that's years later. I was more established then.
Okay.
No, I think it came after I did the Ricky Steamboat interview, and I got talking to Ricky, and he was a great guy. He was like, hey, did you ever think about going? I think you're good enough. He would really pop me up. So I asked him, can I? He goes, yeah, you can give me a recommendation. And Mick said I can put his name on the recommendation too. And that was the only thing. But we also did something. I don't know if you know about this, but way back when there was something called I Want to Be a WWF Superstar. Do you remember this?
I remember. Yeah, I've seen some of those. Yeah.
And Mick was one of the judges, right? So I show up with all this local talent. I don't know what's going to happen, and I got picked for the finals. But I ran into Mick in the hallway, and I got talking to him, and I wanted to pitch something to him, but some security goes, yeah, because I was hoping maybe we could do an angle where he gives me the mandible claw or something, but it never worked out, and they went with the two other guys, and I was just a finalist, but it was fine, But I don't know why I told you that.
Well, yeah, we were talking about you were given a tape talking about the recommendation with Steamboat and all that.
Yeah. So I sent the tape to the E, telling him what I did, giving him my background, what I've done. And I got a call a couple of days later that said, we like your stuff, but I got the big but. Well, first of all, I got to say, it tells you how long ago it was. It was on my answering machine when I came home from work. This is the WW, give us a call. And I'm shaking.
That's crazy to even get a call.
I did get a call, right?
Yeah.
So I call up, and basically, all right, I'm going to give it. It was Kevin Kelly, so I'll
Yeah.
So Kevin Kelly calls me and he says, "Listen," he says, "we like what you do, but managers are not something we use anymore." So I was like, "Listen, I'll host something at the restaurant you guys got in Manhattan," and he was like, no. He basically shot down anything I said. He said, you're like a Model T car. They were great in its day, but we don't drive them anymore. And that was kind of a shot in the heart, a shot in the dark. That was a shot to me that, maybe this isn't going to work. So I kind of backed away from it. I got into other stuff like comedy and everything. But then around 2000, I don't know if I told you, but I was diagnosed with cancer in 2011, and I had surgery. And it's affected me. I can't walk as much, but I could still walk in like it was a long time till it started affecting me. It's called neuropathy. It builds up over time from the radiation that you get from chemo and all that. So I went back in 2016 with Papa Don for a short run. We did 5 boroughs. That's when I met when I did MJF, because the promoter said to me, he said, he's really good, but he curses too much in his promos. He's like, no, so I try not to tell him too much, but you could tell another one that you could tell from the beginning that he had everything that you wanted. So I tried to attach my star to him too, but he was already established. He didn't really need me, but we just did it, for a couple of matches. So I started working, and then when it got worse, I had to stop, So But I did walk away from it for a short time. But you got to understand something, Chris. You never walk away totally. It's a part of you. It's
Yeah.
in you. You got to be around it. I got to be around it somehow. It means that much. It does. And and it's funny. The brotherhood that it has. It's amazing. You can go see these guys at the years and you talk. I tell the same old stories. Everybody likes it. So it's good stuff. But yeah. So I want to think that was like. I know that WWF Restaurant was around at that time. So whenever that was around, that's when I was.
Is it when you take time away, or when do you start doing like stuff for like Law and don't you do extra work for like Law and Order and a few other acting things?
Yeah, that's I want to say like 2007, 2008, stuff
Okay.
like that. Yeah, but you gotta understand something. When you do extra work, you're just basically a breathing prop,
Yeah.
Well, and what they'll do, like let's say you and I are in the main scene, I'll be across the street. You'll barely
Yeah.
see me. That's what they do.
Mhm.
So it was fun. I did it for a short time, but it didn't lead to anything. So I had fun. I had on a few Law and Orders, and a failed pilot that never went anywhere. No movies or anything like that, but
And then all these years later, how did you get the phone call to be inducted in the NYWC Hall of Fame?
no, I came back. A few years ago. Papa Don says, "Why don't you come back? Why don't you come back and say hello?" So I said, "All right." So I came back. Mondo was still there at the time. Um, Dickie Rods, guys had been there since the beginning. Shane O'Neill, those guys. Mike Norman, who I love. Those guys were there, so they welcomed me back with open arms. So the first thing they wanted me to do was a manager seminar. So I did that. About 2 hours talking to their young talent, basically explaining, my philosophy in managing, or even if you're a tag team partner and you're outside the ring, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, how to handle yourself in promos, how to get heat in buildings. Again, if you work in a high school and you find their rival and you mention their rival, I wish I was at a good high school like that. Stuff like that. How you can get heat, how to conduct yourself. But they knew most of this stuff. But I was just telling them from my perspective, and what I feel managing, why I think managing is important, why it can still be important. But it's more important on the indies than anywhere else because that's where the kids need it. Because again, if you can, most wrestlers, most athletes, great in the ring, but they have problems talking. And if you can put it all together, that's when you got it. Me, I'm not that much of an athlete, but I can talk. So you put us together, we make it work. So, and I really want the young students to just concentrating on the wrestling because that's the most important thing. The promos, you can learn promos, you can learn enough to get by. You can learn enough, but that's your most important thing is what happens in that ring. And I always said that the wrestlers are the most important thing. You're the manager, you're on the outside, you're the tag team partner on the outside. So your job is, like I said, it's a cup of coffee. The wrestlers are the coffee, and you're the sugar. You add a little sugar, not enough. Too much sugar, too much. So you walk a real fine line as a manager. I learned that very early on. Stealing heat, it will not make you friends in the back. So you have to. So I tell guys like that. I think I said, listen, if you're going to be a manager and you don't know what you're doing, do whatever you want to do. Yell at the crowd, yell at the referee, yell at the ring guy, anything you want to do before that bell rings. Once that bell rings, you stay there and you don't do a damn thing unless you're told to do it. Unless we work an angle for you, you don't do nothing. And then when that bell rings again and the match is over, then you can do whatever you want again. And that way they learn not to steal heat, and then you slowly learn to build up your character and what you can and can get away with.
So yeah, you started talking. So you Papa Don brings you back. So how do you find out you're doing the Hall of Fame?
That was a phone call from Mike from Shane O'Neill and Dirty Alex, who's part of the Mike Mistretta, those guys down there. They called me. They put me in with Dan Barry and Tony Burma,
Nice.
and I was blown away by it. I was very happy with that because I'd worked with them very early on, and then early on in their formation, so to say, and then didn't work with them for a long time. And then it was nice to be welcomed back. It was nice to be and to meet the young kids, man. That's terrific to watch these guys coming along and still trying to do it. But I will say about today's talent, they got a leg up on our old school guys. And I'll tell you how I know this. Okay. the birth of trampolines in your house. That's, I think, because I didn't have, I mean, we had a trampoline in the gym when I was growing up. That's the only time we saw a trampoline.
Yeah.
But I knew Dan Barry when he was a kid because I worked with his mom. So I knew Dan Barry when he was in elementary school. So, and I remember when they got the trampoline, and Dan could always, so kids doing trampolines early on gives them confidence to do those amazing things that I couldn't even dream of doing. I'd be in traction for 2 months if I tried any of it, So I think that's why I think there were a lot of that because if you remember the Hardy Boys talk about being trampoline wrestling. So I think that's where you get I think trampolines were why all this stuff happens. That's just I could be wrong. That's just my observation. But I watched it with Dan Barry, so.
Wow. So looking at everything, what are you up to nowadays? Like, what's next for you?
Well, basically, I'm pretty much, I retired from my day job. I worked for a water company in Merrick for 30 years, tired on a pension, and I had to go out on disability because of, my legs and everything. But basically what I'm doing now is not too much, to tell you the truth, but I'm planning to move to Texas in the fall. And my daughter and my son-in-law, my grandkids and my grandsons are down there. So I think it's time for me to pop up, and spend time with them. And if something develops from down there, hey, I'm all for it, but I'm just enjoying, whatever time, I have left, I want to spend it with my grandsons and help them.
Nice.
But I will discourage any wrestling talk, and because, it's a tough life, it really is. You really got to want it. And that's what I tell the young kids too. You really have to want it if you want to make it big, because part-time in it, I tried to part-time it. Yeah, it's okay and it's fun and you have a good time, but if you're really serious about it, you have to give it your all. Like it would anything, probably. That's the advice I would give. You got to give it all, man. You got to be willing to drive 300 miles for $50, or $20 sometimes. We worked for pizza. I'll give you a good Havoc story, right?
Yeah.
Georgia Spada. I'm telling you Georgia Spada story, right? Now, George was a great guy. Don't get me wrong. Rest in peace, George. I'm still friends with his son. Now, we would do those carnival shows, like there'd be big carnival, but they have the ring set up. Again, a lot of fun. And we would come into the back and he goes, guys, don't eat. We're going to have food later. Havoc goes, there's our pay. Because sometimes, guys, I can't pay you too much and all this. And it's just, that's everybody's worked for, slice of pizza here and there, but that's the way you learn. I mean, you gotta eat crap for a while until you start, making your way, and then they can trust you in certain things and stuff.
Well, I can't thank you enough for doing this. Like I said, when you reached out, 100% was willing to say yes. So thank you so much, and thank you for all you've done in wrestling.
Okay. Yeah. No, I appreciate it. But we left out one story that I missed.
Absolutely.
Okay. This shows on how tight the solution is. And again, we saw it as a 3-man team, me, Papa Don, and Havoc. And when we lost Havoc, it was a huge loss to us. He was only in his 40s. It was a tragic, sudden death. And it was still not over. It's been 5 years and we're still not over. That's how tight the three of us were. The four of us if you add Tobin, but it's basically the three of us. So we traveled up and down the highways, for years. And the one story I love to tell was, again, I do most of the driving. And I have all my CDs, and all that. We listen to different music, and we both can pretty much be on the same thing, pretty much. So we were doing a Friday night show for this Fed at Amazilla Ballroom in Jamaica, and we had done our match. We'd never worked with these guys before. I think they were from California. So they tell us, okay, guys, listen, this is a Friday night show. They said, we got an after party upstairs. Go have some drinks. We'll be up there to pay you in a little while. So we were up there about an hour or so. And somebody comes up and says, the guy left. What do you mean the guy left? No, the guy left. Like, he left. He skipped us. So Papa Don goes, I know where he lives. And Havoc goes, we're going. So we drive to this guy, and it's like 3:00 in the morning. It's late. Pounding on the door. We got our pay, right? Problem is, we got to turn around. We got to be in Jersey by like noon, 1:00 the next day. So you're talking no sleep at all.
Yeah. So
I picked the guys up the next day, and we are punchy as hell. We're just, whatever. And we're driving through Jersey. We got to drive, the Belt Parkway, George Washington Bridge, and all that pain in the ass stuff. So I'm playing my music, and I happen to play the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. So we're So, and Papa Don, who loves the movie now, never saw the movie. So the scene comes up, the song comes up, the song when Ving Rhames is unfortunately getting molested by the two guys in the basement. So the song comes on. Right? So Papa Don goes, Havoc, we've been thinking of maybe coming out to a new entrance song. Why don't we come out to this, right? And Havoc goes, are you out of your mind? You know what people think about when they hear this song? Men having sex. I'm not coming out to this song. The hell with you. I'd rather come out to John Shane's Allman Brothers songs and come out to this and all this. Because I always come out to the Allman Brothers, right?
Yeah.
So we get to the venue. I think it was the Garfield Boys and Girls Club. And there was a really good Italian restaurant pretty close by called Nino's that we always used to hit. So like I said, I kept playing the song. I kept replaying the song. So we're all again, we're punchy as hell.
Yeah.
Now we get to the show, and again, it's JCW. I'm on the booking committee. I got to be in there. I'm doing a promo to open the show. The Scoundrels are going to introduce me. There's a lot going on. So Havoc goes, John, can we borrow your car? We want to go to Nino's. I'm like, great, go to Nino's. Forget it, right? I totally forget about them. I don't see them. I don't see nothing. So we're getting ready to do the show, and I'm getting ready to come out. So Scoundrels are in the ring. Like, we want to, and I just turned on the Solution a month or two before. So they're ready to introduce me as their new manager. So I'm standing, I'm getting ready. And I look up, and there's like a balcony that the crowd can't see, but because it's covered by the black sheets. And Papa Don and Havoc are there, and they're smiling down at me. And I'm like, all right, guys, how you doing? So the Scoundrels go, all right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our new manager, John the Short Thing Shane. And over the speakers, you hear, so I turn around and but I'm laughing because it's a great rib. So I get my mean face on, and I tear ass through the curtain. I grab the microphone, I get right in the sound guy's face. Scared the poor kid. I debriefed him later. Don't worry about it. I said, who told you to change my music? I come out to the Allman Brothers. Who told you to? I said, you know what people think about when they hear this song? Men having sex. Right? So the Scoundrels are laughing. Ricky O's everybody's in on a gag with me. It was a beauty. It was a beauty. It was one of the best gags that was ever played on me. And the lesson I will give you, in any wrestler, if you get pranked, don't respond. Take it, laugh, say, hey, good one, and then plan your revenge.
What a way to end. Now, I can't thank you enough for joining me. However, every conversation I've done has ended the same. Like you said, never say never, but when it's all said and done in pro wrestling, what do you want John Shane's legacy in pro wrestling to be?
That he kept the manager flame alive, because when I was doing it, there wasn't too many, really out there doing multiple feds and everything. And I felt like it was dying, especially after that phone call. But that was later on. But I'm saying pretty much that I was pure to the old school managing, and that I'm known as the old. One guy said this, and I always take it. Said, I'm so old school, my picture should be black and white. And I took that as the greatest compliment. Ox Baker once said to me, he said, Shane, you got what I call instant heat. You walk out there and they just hate you, and that's my legacy, that I was pure. I'm trying to get the right word. I was, you're gonna have to edit it. It's the word. I was true to the old school manager code, that I watched Lassie, Albano, Wizard, Heenan, and Cornette follow. I tried to do what would those guys do. And that's my legacy, that I kept what they were doing going best as I could. I guess that's the best way I could say it.
Yeah. Well, genuinely, thank you so much for doing this. Like I said, you've done a lot in wrestling, so maybe down the line we do a part 2 or something.
Oh, I would love to. And you know what? I'm hoping to try to keep, and I appreciate you doing this, because I don't get to talk about it that much. Granted, basically, as far as NYWC goes, we come back for Psycho Circus, which is a WrestleMania every year, and that's like old timers day. Everybody comes out for that. A Big Guido comes out for that, Mike, and I know Mike back when he was known as Primo Canera III, and Chris Michaels and Rocky Shore and Gary Reno, guys that I broke in with And it's like old timers day. We just sit around and we tell the old stories again, and the young kids love to hear the old stories. They always have a lot of questions and stuff. And what was really good, probably the last match I ever did was which I think this is probably a better way to end. The last match I did before the Hall of Fame was Papa Don versus Danny Moff at NYWC, and he was managed by Kyle Lawrence St. John, who I spent a year with training. So we had done my final match was I kind of gave a push to the new manager coming up, and I was able to work with two guys who I basically broke in. And what was great about it, I had not seen Danny Moff in years. And, Danny Moff's a tough guy. And I'm telling you, he really, in fact, he's a big Jet fan like I am. And we were at a Jet game one time. I wasn't with him, but they were playing Miami, and I had to pain in the ass Miami fans. And I was really like, shut up, you guys. But then you saw him after the game kicking them. Yeah, we beat your ass. I was like, Moff, you got to come where I am and yell at these guys for me, right? So he had cut a promo before this match, ripping me, saying I was the biggest piece of garbage. And I'm like, Moff, I know it was all wrestling, but I couldn't believe the bolt. He didn't say nothing. I goes, I love Papa Don, I respect you, but John Shane, you're a piece of. And I'm like, what? But when he saw me in the back, big hug. I mean, I hadn't seen him in years. It was just so great. And I saw a Monster Mac recently, and hopefully NYWC has said they're going to put Bobby Lombardi in the Hall of Fame this year, and I'm hoping that happens. And if it does happen, I'm sure a lot of those guys are going to show up. And because that's a brotherhood I'm most proud of is that brotherhood more than anything else, and the brotherhood of wrestling in general. But that brotherhood means the world to me. Those guys. Yeah.
Well, genuinely, once again, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Man, come on, man. You gave me something to do today. I'm gonna go watch Bonanza now. Come on. All right, man. So we're good now.
Yeah. So thank you so much for doing this, and thank you everybody for watching this episode. This was Best for Business.
Thank you for watching this episode of Best for Business. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, because this is Best for Business.